That rifle belongs in a museum, not on a tactical course. The comment carried across the outdoor shooting range at the Shelby County Law Enforcement Training Academy in Memphis, Tennessee, loud enough to draw attention and uncomfortable glances from several of the police officers present for the quarterly qualification course. Officer Brandon Mitchell, 29 years old and 2 years into his position as a tactical firearms instructor for the Memphis Police Department SWAT team, stood examining the rifle that had just been unkissed at the registration table. The weapon was an M14 battle rifle in its original military configuration, and to Mitchell's modern tactical sensibilities, it looked completely out of place at a contemporary law enforcement training facility. The rifle showed its age and military heritage in every detail. The walnut stock was darkened from decades of use and showed the honest were marks of field service. The parkerized steel finish had worn to bare metal at high contact points, and the entire weapon had the unmistakable character of something that had seen real combat rather than just range time. The man who owned the rifle stood quietly beside the registration table, seemingly unbothered by the scrutiny. James Walker, 72 years old, stood at 6 feet tall with the upright military posture that never quite leaves Marines who served in combat. He wore simple civilian clothes that looked like they'd come from a department store rather than a tactical outfitter: blue jeans, a plain gray polo shirt, well-worn hiking boots, and a faded Vietnam veteran's baseball cap that most of the young officers didn't even register. His face showed deep lines carved by 7 decades of life, including 18 months in the jungles and mountains of Vietnam, and his hands, though showing the slight tremor common to advanced age, moved with practiced economy as he signed the waiver forms required for the course. The Memphis Police Department held quarterly open tactical carbine courses that allowed qualified civilians and retired law enforcement to participate alongside active duty officers, maintaining skills and building community relationships. James had been attending for 8 years, ever since he moved to Memphis to be closer to his daughter's family. Mitchell picked up the M14 without asking permission, a breach of range etiquette that made several nearby officers exchange disapproving glances. He examined it with theatrical skepticism, playing to his audience of 3 other SWAT team members who had gathered around. "Seriously, sir, you're going to run a tactical carbine course with this? This rifle weighs like 11 pounds empty. It's got a 20-round magazine when modern carbines have 30. The wood stock is going to swell in this humidity. And that iron sight setup is from like 1960. How do you expect to compete against AR-15s with red dots and magnified optics?" His fellow instructors laughed, encouraged by his performance. Officer Davis, 26, added his own commentary while adjusting the expensive aim-point sight on his custom-built patrol carbine that had cost the department over $2,000. "My setup has a micro red dot, weapon light, adjustable stock, free-float barrel, and I'm shooting 5.56 ammunition designed specifically for law enforcement use. That battle rifle is shooting .308 rounds that'll go through 3 walls. It's not even appropriate for urban tactical applications. How is this even allowed on the course?" The range master, a retired sheriff's deputy named Martinez who had been running these courses for 15 years, spoke up from the registration table. "Gentlemen, Mr. Walker has qualified on this course 32 consecutive times with that exact rifle. His scores are consistently in the top 10%. He knows what he's doing." But Mitchell, committed to his performance and unwilling to back down in front of his team and the dozen other officers who had gathered for the course, pushed forward. "Top 10% with a battle rifle from the Vietnam era isn't impressive when you're competing against patrol officers. This is a SWAT-level tactical course. We're running multiple target transitions, barricade positions, moving targets, stress shoots. That rifle is completely wrong for this application. Maybe he should consider sitting this one out and just watching how modern tactics work." The condescension in his voice was thick enough that even some of Mitchell's own SWAT teammates looked uncomfortable. One of them, Officer Jackson, who had served in the Army before joining Memphis PD, quietly said, "Mitchell, maybe we should just—" "I've got this, Jackson," Mitchell interrupted, still focused on the M14 and its elderly owner. "I'm trying to provide constructive feedback about equipment selection for tactical applications." Before James could respond with what would likely have been another patient deflection, A voice called out from the range control tower with sharp authority. "Officer Mitchell, I need you at the tower right now. Immediately." The speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Henderson, 51 years old, retired Marine Corps infantry officer and the director of the Shelby County Law Enforcement Training Academy. She had been observing from the elevated control tower and had recognized James Walker immediately, both from his regular attendance at courses and from his legendary status in certain circles of the tactical training community. Henderson was not someone whose orders were questioned or delayed, and Mitchell's confident expression finally cracked as he realized he had drawn the attention of his ultimate supervisor and the person who controlled his instructor certification. Mitchell climbed the stairs to the control tower with diminishing swagger, aware that every officer at the range was now watching him and sensing that he had made some kind of serious error in judgment. Henderson waited until Mitchell was inside the small control room before speaking, her voice low but carrying the kind of intensity that made even experienced SWAT officers nervous. "Do you have any idea who you just disrespected?" Mitchell swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. He's an elderly civilian participant with outdated equipment. I was providing guidance about appropriate." "That man," Henderson interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade, "is James Walker. He served as a Marine Corps scout sniper in Vietnam from 1969 to 1971. He carried that exact M14 rifle for 18 months of combat operations. After the Marine Corps, he spent 28 years as an FBI special agent assigned to the hostage rescue team, where he was the senior marksman and tactics instructor. That outdated M14 has been in continuous use by him for 53 years, and it's claimed more lives in defense of this country than you can probably comprehend." Henderson pulled out her tablet and pulled up several documents and photographs, showing them to Mitchell. The first image was a military photograph from 1970 showing a much younger James in Marine utilities, holding the same M14, standing with his spotter in what appeared to be a firebase. The second document was an FBI certificate showing James had completed hostage rescue team selection, one of the most elite tactical programs in federal law enforcement. The third image was more recent, from a law enforcement training conference, showing an older James instructing a class of SWAT operators on precision rifle techniques. After retiring from the FBI in 2005, Henderson continued, her voice growing harder with each sentence. "James Walker became a contract instructor for the FBI Academy, the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, and multiple federal and state tactical teams. He's written 3 tactical training manuals that are used by law enforcement agencies nationwide. He holds the course record at this facility, a record that stood for 6 years, and he set it with that same M14 rifle you just mocked. His time was 3 minutes and 12 seconds for a course that takes most officers over 4 minutes to complete." Henderson wasn't finished. She pulled up another photograph showing James at what appeared to be an award ceremony, standing beside the FBI director and receiving a medal. This photograph was taken in 2004 when James received the FBI star for his actions during a hostage rescue operation where he made a 600-yard shot through a 6-inch window gap to eliminate a hostage taker. The rescue was successful because of his skill, experience, and that museum piece rifle. The techniques you use, the standards your SWAT team maintains for marksmanship and tactical movement, a significant portion of that comes directly or indirectly from James Walker's teaching and legacy. Mitchell's face had gone from confident to pale as he processed the magnitude of his error. He looked out the control tower window at James, who was now calmly preparing his shooting position, apparently unbothered by the drama unfolding around him. The old Marine was laying out magazines, checking his rifle's zero, and reviewing the course requirements with the methodical precision of someone who had run thousands of similar evolutions. "The rifle you mocked as, from 1960, Henderson said, her voice dripping with contempt, is chambered in .308 Winchester, which has superior ballistic performance to 5.56 NATO at distances beyond 300 yards. The outdated iron sights are actually a skill test. If you can shoot well with irons, you can shoot well with anything. The heavy weight makes the rifle more stable and reduces recoil impulse. The inappropriate ammunition selection shows someone who understands terminal ballistics and knows exactly what his weapon will do in any situation. Every criticism you just made reveals your own limited understanding of tactical applications beyond the narrow scope of urban CQB. She turned to face Mitchell directly. Today's course is a tactical carbine qualification that tests multiple skills: target transitions, barricade shooting, positional shooting, movement under time pressure, and stress management. All the fancy modern equipment in the world won't help if you don't have fundamental shooting skills, tactical thinking, and experience. And James Walker has more of all three than everyone on your SWAT team combined. Henderson pointed to the course layout. You're going to run the course first, Officer Mitchell. You're going to give it your absolute best effort with all your modern equipment and SWAT training. And then you're going to watch James Walker run the same course with that museum piece, and show you what real tactical proficiency looks like. Consider it a learning experience. Mitchell descended from the control tower on shaking legs, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. The other SWAT instructors had heard through the grapevine what was happening, and they had already moved away from James's position, giving him respectful space and shooting Mitchell looks that ranged from sympathy to disgust at his behavior. The course began with Mitchell's run. The tactical carbine course was designed to simulate real-world law enforcement scenarios, engaging multiple targets at varying distances, shooting from behind barricades, transitioning between positions under time pressure, and maintaining accuracy while managing stress. Mitchell was good. He had earned his SWAT position through skill and training. His time was 3 minutes and 47 seconds with 2 minor penalties for misses on distant targets. It was a solid performance by any standard, placing him in the top 20% of officers who ran this course, but then it was James Walker's turn. The elderly Marine approached the starting position slowly, his movements showing his age as he settled into his first shooting position. But once he brought that M14 up to his shoulder, something fundamental changed. The slight tremor in his hands disappeared. His breathing became deep and controlled. His 72-year-old body moved with the fluid efficiency of someone whose muscle memory had been built through decades of repetition. The course started. James engaged the first target array with methodical precision, 2 round center mass on each target, the heavy .308 rounds punching clean holes through steel with authority that 5.56 couldn't match. He transitioned to the barricade position with smooth economy of movement, no wasted motion, no hesitation. His reloads were fast but not rushed, practiced through thousands of repetitions until they were automatic. The moving targets that had challenged Mitchell were engaged with the kind of lead and timing that comes from understanding bullet flight and target movement at an instinctive level. James moved through the course like water finding its path, each position flowing into the next, each shot breaking with the crisp authority of perfect trigger control. The watching officers had gone silent, recognizing they were witnessing something special, not just good shooting, but the kind of mastery that comes from a lifetime of dedication to the craft. The final stage required engaging multiple targets while moving laterally, a stress shoot designed to test an officer's ability to maintain accuracy under physical exertion and time pressure. James executed it flawlessly, his old legs moving steadily, the heavy M14 tracking smoothly between targets, brass ejecting in a steady rhythm. When the final round broke and the timer stopped, the range went silent for a moment before the range master called out the time, 2 minutes and 58 seconds. New course record. The range erupted in applause and cheers. Even the SWAT officers who had been watching Mitchell's performance were clapping, recognizing that they had just witnessed something they'd be talking about for years. Mitchell stood off to the side, no longer the center of attention, watching as officers crowded around James to shake his hand and ask questions about his technique. Lieutenant Colonel Henderson approached James, and the old Marine stood to greet her. "Colonel Henderson, good to see you again. Thank you for still letting an old jarhead run your course." "James, that was textbook perfect," Henderson replied with genuine warmth. "You're still teaching lessons even when you're not trying to. That's the second course record you've set at this facility." She turned to address the gathered officers, particularly the SWAT team members. "Let this be a lesson to everyone here, especially our tactical instructors. Modern equipment is wonderful, and we should always strive to have quality tools. But equipment is just equipment. What matters is fundamentals, experience, tactical thinking, and the relationship between a shooter and their weapon. James Walker just set a new course record with a rifle some of you dismissed as obsolete, using techniques some of you thought were outdated, drawing on skills developed over 5 decades of service. She gestured to James. This man has forgotten more about tactical operations than most of us will ever learn. His outdated M14 just outperformed every modern carbine here today. That should tell you something about the value of fundamentals and experience versus relying on technology to compensate for lack of skill. Mitchell approached James after the course was complete and most officers had left for lunch. "Mr. Walker, I need to apologize. I was completely out of line. I judged your equipment and your capabilities based on appearance without knowing anything about you or your experience. I was disrespectful and I failed to show the judgment and professionalism my position requires. I'm sorry." James was packing his M14 back into its worn case, the same case he'd carried to hundreds of ranges over 5 decades. "Son, you made an honest mistake. You saw equipment that looked outdated to your modern eyes, and you drew conclusions. That's natural. But here's what I learned in 53 years of pulling triggers in training in combat: the weapon doesn't make the shooter. This M14 and I know each other. I know exactly how it shoots in any condition, any position, any stress level. That familiarity and that relationship are worth more than any amount of modern technology." He gestured to Mitchell's expensive custom carbine. "Your weapon is excellent. It's lighter, has better ergonomics, more ammunition capacity, and modern optics. For your mission as a SWAT officer in an urban environment, it's probably more appropriate than my M14. But don't confuse appropriate for your mission with universally superior. Different tools for different purposes. And never confuse the tool with the skill of the person using it." Lieutenant Colonel Henderson added her own teaching moment. "Officer Mitchell, you're going to write a detailed after-action report on today's events. Not for disciplinary purposes, James has requested no formal action, which shows you the kind of person he is, but for training purposes. This is going to become a case study for our instructor development program about the importance of respect, professional courtesy, and understanding that experience and fundamentals often trump equipment advantages." Over the following months, Mitchell did exactly that. He attended several of James's contract instruction courses, learning advanced precision rifle techniques and tactical thinking that hadn't been part of his SWAT training. He learned that the M14, while heavier and lower capacity than modern carbines, offered ballistic advantages at extended ranges that made it still relevant in certain applications. He learned to shoot with iron sights, discovering that the skill translated to better performance even when using optics. And he learned humility, understanding that there were people whose quiet competence far exceeded his own despite having equipment that looked outdated. James Walker continued his regular attendance at the Shelby County tactical courses, and his M14 became something of a beloved fixture at the facility. The course record he set stood for another 4 years until he broke it himself at age 76, running the course in 2 minutes and 53 seconds and proving that skill and experience could transcend even the physical limitations of age. The story of what happened at the Memphis training facility spread quickly through the law enforcement tactical community. James's name became synonymous with the lesson that equipment doesn't make the shooter, and that the most dangerous operators are often the ones who look the most ordinary. And the worn M14 battle rifle, carried through Vietnam jungles and FBI operations and thousands of training evolutions, continued to prove that mastery transcends technology, and that true tactical proficiency is measured in decades of dedication, not the price of equipment. Where are you watching from today? Tell us in the comments about a time when you learned not to judge capability by equipment age. Subscribe to Hidden Legends for more stories proving that skill earned through decades will always outperform technology.